So today we're going to talk about mysteries of unified communications. And this is kind of in keeping with the Halloween theme, but that was not really my intent. What we're talking about are some of the pieces that are missing in a unified communications environment. And what a lot of times happens is folks make kind of this leap of informational consideration. Usually it's led to by what we like to call marketing. Where the truth won't work, so we use marketing as the excuse. The end result, though, is sometimes pieces get left out. When we talk about unified communications, when we talk about this notion of a unified messaging environment, everything's going to work seamlessly with everything else, you don't have to worry about any details. Sometimes that's not the whole story. And we have to be careful of that so that we make sure that we don't get trapped in an environment that doesn't allow for this notion of universal communications. So what have we got going on that's happening here? Well, we've got this evolution to software. The world is changing as we know it, and all hardware is going to go away. Well, except for the devices that you're running your software on, right? So we've got iPads, iPhones, iDebris, Android phones, Android debris, other things, all these little widgets and bells and Chromebooks and other abusive devices that aren't allowed on airplanes, but you can run now at certain times. They have to run software. All right, so we don't really get rid of hardware. We just change the hardware that we've got. So we've got this evolution of software. We've got this notion of scale. What do we mean by scale? Well, in the old days, I might have a cell phone and I've got a laptop and they don't talk to each other. But today, I might have a laptop and a cell phone and an iPad and some other things, and they're all linked to the same account in my corporate infrastructure. And I have to manage multiple logins from multiple devices from the same user over and over again and not cause network anomalies to occur. Things that would, under older conditions, cause a network to crumble to its knees or cause a login to fail because you're going in with more than one device on the same login. That's not allowed. Try a different login, and then it locks you out. We can't have that. Interoperability. This is the part of unified and universal communications that often gets left out. There'll be notions of a unified communications environment. All right, we're going to present vendor A, and they have unified communications, as long as you've got all of vendor A's stuff applied. But what if I want to talk to vendor B? Well, you may not be able to do that right away, but we've got a gateway in the next release that's going to take care of all your problems. How many people will that support? Well, it'll support 4 concurrent calls. But I've got 400 subscribers. What am I going to do with that? First come, first serve. Okay, that'll play well. User experience. I want to have an environment where my user doesn't have to figure out the details. They don't want to have to know how to communicate from one device to another. They don't want to change from their laptop. They don't want to have to figure out key codes on a phone. They don't want to have a different interface on their iPad device. They just want it to be simple. Okay, so if I send you a link that says all you have to do is dial 76111-623 at polycom.com, are you going to figure that out? Maybe. How does that apply to my particular device? I don't know. How about if I send you a link that says click here? And then whatever device you're on, it blows open some default browser and just works. Whoa, that's even executive proof. Now, that's not a bad way to deal with things. You make it as simple as possible for the end users, and then people are happy with the environment. So the idea is we may need to add to these unified communication solutions to enable the user experience that people expect. All right? And this is where partners like VIcom come into real importance, because they'll be asking the questions necessary to figure out what's needed to implement the expected environment. It's really hard to build these kinds of environments with just picking a line item off of a chart. Okay, I want one of those, I want two of those, I want three of these, and I want them all to be gray. Okay, but none of these play with each other. Well, who's going to tell me that? The guys from VIcom. They're the ones who will help you. And then you'll end up with stuff that actually works, makes sense. Current architecture. In the network world, in the communication world, we've got devices that live in multiple network environments. They don't necessarily talk to each other. Packet switched is out on the internet, and it's the big, hairy, scary thing. Oh my God, we're going to get hacked. Circuit switched is the phone company people. Those two technologies don't necessarily talk to each other seamlessly. We've got to accommodate that. All right, well, I'm putting in a voice over IP environment, and I want to make sure that I can place regular phone calls. Okay, you can do that a couple different ways. If you do it the right way, you place a call from your voice over IP environment to the public circuit switch network, and it's a direct connect. You don't have to worry about it. If you do it the wrong way, you end up with every call that you make from your local organization looping out to a service provider and then coming back in and then going out again. Well, what's that do to my internet traffic? Well, you just tripled it for no good reason. Oh, crap. Now what do I do? Well, you make sure that you work with people who understand what's going on and how to make this stuff play. We've got limited connectivity between packet switched and voice networks. We've got limited interoperability between other types of network. Anybody here still using ISDN? This is really big in the government business areas. And we've got to figure out methods to get from that network type into other network types and not cause problems for the users. If you do the migration right, you can make this completely transparent. If you do the migration the hard way, you end up with things where people have to figure out directory locations and new dialing plans and redirects for a prefix, and the call goes this way if you use this prefix, and it goes this way if you use that prefix. No! You're going to make people's heads explode. It's not a good thing. It's a lot of cleanup after that. So be careful. Limited control capability. If anybody here has to manage a network, has to manage deployed communication devices, this is really critical to you. You don't want to have to be driving around everywhere, getting stuck in tunnel traffic because I've got to go out and physically update a unit that's out in the field. I want to be able to do that from a remote management, central location, nice air-conditioned office. I don't have to deal with the traffic. Okay, pick the right solution and that'll happen. Try to build it yourself, try to make things happen with disparate devices and different company equipment may not actually work. So just be careful of these things. Almost all this equipment in unified communications can work with other equipment that's part of that environment. The folks who are deploying it have to understand up front that the intent is universal communications and interoperability so that they don't get focused on proprietary features. And this is something that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. So we look at this convergence of solutions. How do we get from where we are now to this fully unified communications environment? Well, proprietary is bad. We don't want to be stuck there. We don't want to end up in a silo. All right, well, there's some folks who say that, well, if we use Microsoft, Microsoft is a silo. They're their own little world, and they're going to cause problems. Well, to tell you the truth, Microsoft does one of the cleanest solutions in unified communications. They've actually thought about the interplay of all these devices and said, all right, well, let's just make it applicable to all of them. They run a Microsoft thing, and then it all communicates with other things, and then it doesn't matter. Okay, it's Microsoft's approach, but it's a working approach. They don't have to go from telephone device to computer and back and forth. We're moving from time division multiplex, ISDN, to IP communications, H323 and SIP. It's the natural order of things. There's only 2 people left in the phone company who know how to make ISDN work, and they're both on permanent holiday. So you're not going to get any support that way anymore. Trunking services, ISDN, PRIs, things like that, phone company still knows how to deliver. ISDN basic rate, they copy and paste a working configuration from someone's old account into a new account to make it work. They have no idea how it works. The chips aren't even made for it anymore. So it's one of those things. If you're there, figure out a migration plan, because in the next 5 years, you're doomed. Communication networks will coexist and must interoperate. We have to figure out this path from ISDN to IP. We have to figure out this path from conventional telephony to IP telephony. Otherwise, again, we're going to get trapped and stuck. SIP is the standard going forward, and we're going to talk about SIP in a little bit. It's one of these things that allows an awful lot of these technologies to play nicely together. SIP was invented by the folks who brought you email. They didn't get it right at first. You know, there was some problems with email. I can't open your attachment. Well, what are you using? I'm using AOL. Oh, crap. But it's all been figured out now. Today, you can send an email to just about anybody and they get all the information. Wow, that's pretty cool. You can send it to your cell phone and you get all the information. That's pretty cool too. So this stuff is what we're using going forward, and it allows communications to be borderless. I don't necessarily have to be stuck in a particular network. And we'll talk about how that works in a second. SIP is a communications handshake that lets you set up a call. Session Initiation Protocol is what it stands for. And it's a communication method to set up a session. And the session is whatever. It doesn't care whether I'm doing a voice communication, or I'm doing a graphic communication, or I'm doing a video communication. It figures that out. But what it also does is it leverages some of the network technology that's already in place and already available for communications. So SIP says, I have a registrar, and my registrar is going to tell you how to make this call happen. But the you is the technology. It's the user interface part. It's not the user part. I, as the user, don't have to know how this call is being launched. I can send a call to jim.smith@polycom.com. The end result is the network figures out how to resolve that address and send the call on. So it doesn't care that I want to be on a cell phone today, or on a video conference system tomorrow, or on a laptop on another day, or on an iPad on another day. The network says, I know where you are. I'm going to route the call to you. You can pick how you want to answer it. It also gives you the opportunity to avoid things like firewalls. In the truest implementation of SIP, it tells the network that there are firewalls involved, and it better negotiate the firewall paths as part of the communication environment. So it figures these things out for you. The user doesn't have to figure it out. So again, this notion of redirect, this notion of trying to create environments specific to a communication event, they go away. And if they go away, the users are happier. And your support calls go down. You don't have to worry about how am I going to deal with the difference between a video call and a graphics sharing event. I don't care. It's a communication exercise, and the network figures it out for me. And when it's all put together correctly, I don't have to worry about anything. Anybody can talk to anything else, and there's no extra effort involved. And this is kind of cool. You want to join a conference with your iPhone? You can do that. You don't have to reload a different application. You click on a link, and it opens up the browser for you, and it launches the call application for you, and it does all the call routing for you. And that's unified communications. We don't have to think about the details. So the underlying software and services that enable unification is this notion of UCC. Different companies have different terms, what they call UCC. Unified Communications and Collaboration, Unified Collaborative Communications, or Microsoft, Universal Communications and Collaboration. The universal part might be a little bit of a stretch. Yeah, there might be some marketing involved there. But it's an overlay architecture that allows all these layers of communication to work together. All right, so there may be more to this than just a widget. I want a UCC widget. Okay, well, a UCC widget is great, but what are you going to use it on? Oh, I might need a UCC environment. Okay, so how do we do this UCC environment? We have to rely on experts. It's not something you want to venture into alone. But what you get when you're done is an end-to-end solution that relies on open standards, so any of these devices can talk to any other device, and it will work. Completely seamless from the user experience. We mask the complexity of the technology with this software layer, with this interface component. And the interface component is critical to success. Allows people to communicate any way they want to in real time without IT involvement. This also means they don't necessarily need site managers to walk into a room and initiate a call for them. They don't necessarily need to find out, okay, what's my outside phone line address so that I can have a call come in? You don't want to have to worry about that. You generate a link. Meet me at polycom.com. Send. They click on the link. The call happens. Oh, well, that's too easy. Okay, but behind the curtain, there's a lot of stuff going on. And we'll talk about some of that stuff right now. You know, all these different things are part of collaborative communication. The personal computers, the video appliances, telephone, the bring your own device, that's critical in industry right now. In government, it's becoming critical. In healthcare, it's really annoying. You know, people want to have these personal devices, but I like using my iPad. Well, how am I going to secure that with patient information? Well, I have to make sure that the patient information doesn't live on the iPad. All right, well, how do I make sure of that? Well, these other things, the network services that support it, have to provide that kind of environment. Lots of questions to think about, lots of directions that you can go. And let's take a little bit of a side detour here, because this is a question that comes up a lot in UCC, real-time communications. WebRTC, it's the wave of the future. It's everything that's going to be for anyone. It's Google. That means it's great. Well, perhaps you want to think about this a little bit. WebRTC is a peer-to-peer communication environment that is mesh-based. So that means every endpoint that's part of this communication environment is connected in some way. It also allows for a proprietary video coder and audio coder to be part of the environment. But it gives you free and open rein to enhance this in any way you see fit. Cool. So how compatible is it? Well, it works in Mozilla Firefox and it works in Chrome. Well, how about Internet Explorer? Does it work with Internet Explorer? No. Does it work with Safari? No. So how universal is this? Well, it's universal as long as you've got Firefox and Chrome running. Sometimes WebRTC breaks itself. There was a big update pushed out October of last year that broke every WebRTC application that existed. There was another update that got pushed out in April of this year that broke every WebRTC application that existed. So it was fun. It's been an interesting exercise. But that stuff's not supposed to happen. In the next release, we guarantee that it's going to be fully interoperable with everything. Okay, except it's going to run VP8 for a video coder and Opus for audio coder. Well, how interoperable is that? Well, as long as you're running VP8 and Opus, it'll be fine. Yeah, but I don't have that. I've got an H.323-based video conference system. How am I going to connect? Oh, you want to do that? Well, you'll have to use a gateway, or you'll have to do this, or you'll have to figure out another path. It's a distraction right now. Eventually, all sorts of different capabilities will come via WebRTC. But it's just another thing. It's just another layer. It's a widget. It's a shiny thing. Oh, look, a squirrel. It's not necessarily the be-all, end-all of everything. So don't get caught here. All right? It's not the ultimate solution to life, the universe, and everything. If it was, it would say 42 all over it. Anyway, a business case study. We're going to talk about Dow Chemical. Little tiny company, not much of interest in the world, but they were looking at trying to figure out how to deal with this communication kind of environment and how to make it viable for their employees. And a corporate culture of travel to do everything. We need to go to Minnesota. We need to go to Chicago. We need to go to Georgia. We need to... So how do they deal with it? How do they make sure that they help their employees manage what's going on? So they thought about video conferencing. All right, well, video conferencing is one aspect of communication. It's not all communication. It's not unified communication, but it does help with things like face-to-face communication and getting interesting notions of people-to-people communication. Sometimes helps people get a life, but isn't everything. So we think about what else we're going to do. Voice, video, and data were all on different infrastructures, all different networks, different management teams, different associations, different core host sites. It required lots of resources with lots of on-site people. One of the decisions they made was to migrate to a completely converged network. Everything on a common core. So that allows the video, the voice, and the data to have an opportunity to interoperate. Okay, so now I've got an option to manage my costs, standardize the system, simplify my network environment, and increase my security, increase the performance, and provide better bandwidth management to my customers. So they looked at it holistically. Let's take the whole approach and make sure that we're delivering the right solution to the customer. So the solution required an ability to integrate with other products, not a lone wolf kind of environment, not a single vendor kind of environment, but operating with multi-vendors, multiple destinations, multiple firewalls, centralize the management of everything, and provide global coverage. We're going to do this. We're going to make it happen. So they implemented over 500 conference rooms in 170 countries, desktop conferencing, 3,000 desktops throughout their environment, and then every employee can talk to any other employee via directory, Active Directory, buddy lists. We're going to do instant messaging. It's all there. One interface. Communicate with everything. You notice I didn't mention a word about who the hardware was provided by? Because it doesn't matter. They had to think about the technology in advance and think about the use model in advance and then pick the widgets. But they didn't pick the widgets. Their partner picked the right widgets to make their solution work. And the end result was an environment that did what they expected and didn't cause them problems. So the result was everything is live 24 hours a day. Decision makers can be reached anywhere at any time in the world, doesn't matter. Full communications, any device can be managed centrally from a central location. Standardization means that you go to any office in the world and you get the same user interface, the same experience, the same feeling, the same level of connectivity, and people see unified communications as a productivity tool. If I didn't have unified communications, I couldn't do my job. That's the result you want. That's the result we try to get to. Can provide better work-life balance. People are happier. They want to stay working for a company. Reduces training costs, reduces management costs. All sorts of good benefits from providing this kind of environment the right way. That's pretty cool. Where do I buy one? No, you don't buy one. You enlist the aid of a partner who's going to help you figure out the right path to take. But don't go picking widgets. It'll make you nuts. So let's build a UCC solution. So we talked about this earlier, the demand for scale. And it used to be a single device, a single user, one connection, one device, no problem. But now we've got multi-devices with a single user. And we have to accommodate that in the network architecture. And if we don't accommodate this in the network architecture, we cause our users problems. Oh, don't worry about that. All you have to do is use Jim Smith 1 for this device, and Jim Smith 2 for that device, and Jim Smith 3 for that device. It'll be great. Don't worry about it. Oh, so how do they call me? Well, if they want to reach you on your cell phone, they call Jim Smith 1. And if they want to reach you on your desktop, they call Jim Smith 2. No. Jim Smith at polycom.com. End of story. Okay, then we have to make the network figure out the rest of the details. We want to consider the end user experience. How are we going to make these environments work for the people? Not make it so that people have to adapt their behavior to the room or to the connection or to the device. We want to make these things transparent to them. So we think about things, room layouts, aesthetics, and environmental, audio capabilities, content sources. These are, it's more than just the widget. The widget is a piece of the puzzle, but the environment is a major aspect of the puzzle. So you walk into a room and you walk up to a chair and you sit down at the chair and you say, okay, I want to communicate. All right, well, if there's no anything in the room to let you do that, that's kind of a pointless exercise. If you put the things in the wrong spot, the chairs face this way, the communication engine is over here. This doesn't work out well. Think of the people. Think of their interaction with the technology. Make their lives work. I almost got pulled apart. That would have been awful. Okay, so building out these kinds of systems, we look at different roles that the technology plays. We've got different pieces of the puzzle. Gatekeeping. Gatekeeping's part of communication technology and video conferencing, and it lets the network figure out how calls get routed from point A to point B. We've got different pieces of this that let us work together. An Active Directory is kind of the core of making these technologies work. Active Directory is a file structure in a computer network that says, I know who my users are and I know all their attributes. And if you pick the right attributes of these users, you'll be able to communicate. And by you, I don't mean the you specific user. I mean the you, the device, the network interface that lets it happen. Users should not have to care. Users don't want to know that there's an Active Directory. Users only want the benefit of that Active Directory. Okay, so you don't ask the user, would you like to be part of this Active Directory environment? You say, here, click, done. And then they're happy. Life goes on. We think about some of the other things. UC integration. We need to talk to other environments. We need to talk to Microsoft. We need to talk to Cisco. We may need to talk to other players, Avaya, Siemens, Broadsoft. How do we make sure that happens? Well, we make sure that the technologies that we pick, the pieces of the puzzle, all play nicely together. And if they all play nicely together, then the universal communications, the unified part of UCC, can actually happen. When we're looking at Microsoft, when we're looking at Cisco, these are two disparate environments. They're the big players in the UCC environment, in the UCC world. Can they play together? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. More often, you'll end up with people who say, no, we're a Microsoft house, no, we're a Cisco house. Okay, if you put the right widgets in the middle, you can create an environment where everything works transparently. And again, the user doesn't have to care. And if the user doesn't have to care, their life just got simpler. You just made their day better. Everything about this rollout becomes a joy. Maybe not for the people behind the curtain. And let's be kind of clear about that. There is an awful lot of administrative stuff that has to go on to make these kinds of environments work. And it's great to have a good guide to bring you through it. Management of these devices. We look at we're talking about gatekeeper earlier. We're talking about internal databases and synchronization. All these parts are, again, widgets in this environment that make the different technologies work. Firewall traversal. This is a very scary thing. Firewalls, ooh, what do we do with the firewall? Well, if we don't think about it, we end up in trouble. And again, this is one of those things where until you've been burned by it, you tend to not worry about it. You know, the firewall world is about protecting your inner network from outside entities. Okay, well, what constitutes an outside entity? Well, it's people who want to hack my network. Well, how about people who want to call you? Oh, yeah, they're outside too, aren't they? Well, how do I deal with that? You have to design for it. You have to make sure that that's included in part of the environment. You know, lots of different ways to do it, lots of different ways to approach it. These are things that you would talk about with your designer, with your room people. Bring your own device. This is another place where people get all caught up. Well, I want to use my iPhone and I want to connect to the projector that's in your room. How do I do that? Well, you log on to the guest network and, oh, the guest network doesn't connect to that projector. Now what do I do? Crap. You have to have thought about this in advance. You know, and the right partners will let you do that, help you through the process. You know, common user credentials for every device, where you don't end up in a situation where I have to log in as this here and this here and this, try to keep all those passwords straight. Oh yeah, we're going to make you change your password every 4 days for security enhancement. And you can't use the same password more than 22 times in a row. Recording content. This is something that people are really looking forward to in unified communications. Oh boy, I'm going to place a call, I'm going to have an event, and I'm going to have a bunch of engineers in the same project, and we're going to record this so that when they say they never said that, I can play it back. And they'll hear it. Oh boy, this is truly the beauty of unified communications. Okay, we have to make sure that you accommodate that. And again, these outside access points, bringing it in through a streaming server, whatever, all these things have to be designed up front and made transparent for the user so that the stream on demand works when it needs to. Few more things that we're going to talk about. Classic network architecture, where all the devices link into one host and they don't ever communicate outside. That's bygones. We don't live there anymore. It's a really bad idea. There's a couple companies that are still out there who are promoting this individualized communication environment. And you can't talk to anyone else, but why would you ever want to? Oh, but I need to. I work for Department of Defense and I need to talk to folks in California and they don't have this system. Oh, well then you'll have to subscribe to our gateway service. Prepare for these things in advance. Get it done right. So that when you've got the overall environment that actually works, you're talking with Avaya, you're talking with IBM, you're talking with Microsoft, talking with BroadSoft, Siemens, it doesn't matter. The technology becomes isolated from the users. All they know is, I had a call, it worked, my life is easier. I don't have to do anything else today. I can go fishing. Life is good. So, I want to thank you for your attention. Thank you for playing along. Thank you for not throwing things. I'm not in the mood to duck.